Welcome to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast, your destination for all things lacrosse. I'm your host, Kyle Devitt, and alongside me, across the table, Mr. Italia, Jack Piatelli. How we doing, man?
Doing very, very well. Today's a special day.
Oh, God, what'd you do?
How long have we been doing the podcast now? A year and a half?
I think it's 2 years now.
It's already 2 years.
It's 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Wow. You're one of those guys that have short arms and deep pockets, right? And, it's really surprising to me that you actually offered to have a few beverages after the podcast today. And our great producer, David Yaz, is going to join us. And you actually brought your wallet today, so I can't wait to have a few beverages on you. So first time in my life with you.
Yeah, can I tell you, I almost did the I left my wallet at home thing. I really did. I was like ready to do that, and then I was like,
well, there's nothing in your wallet anyway. It doesn't matter whether you leave it there or bring it.
I know. This is all on credit. It's fine. No,
I sent the text out. It was funny what you said. I sent the text out to our producer who does an outstanding job for us, Dave Yaz, and you. And I said, you guys still up for, having a beverage after our podcast? And you said, well, I am the poorest one of the three.
That is what I said.
What did I say?
Here,
that's not my problem.
It's not my problem. Yeah.
Thanks for the invite, Jack.
Yes.
Well, good enough for the podcast, but not the drinks.
Well, let's bring in our guest,
the editor,
the esteemed managing editor of all the brands at Seamans Media, Mike Z.
Good to be here, guys. Look forward to doing this show every year with you, and we all know what a special show this is.
And we should say what that is now. And you're listening to the ISL show, but you already know that because you clicked on it. So we're going to go from, I think what's the category we decided to go from?
I think we're going to take a spin through the league and take a look at the different tiers, the way we see them maybe setting up in the preseason, and also talk about what we've seen from the league the last couple of years, guys. This is the third year of the ISL Championship Tournament era. Nobles has won the first two. Governors has been the runner-up in the first two. Maybe we start by our takes on how that format's working and what we like about it.
Yeah,
I love the format. I love the playoffs. When my two sons were at St. Sebastian's, they had talked about having the playoffs, but then COVID hit, obviously.
Right. And
what's challenging for the players and the coaches during those years when they didn't have the playoffs, if you had one loss or two losses, it was very unlikely that you would be able to win the championship. There wasn't a playoff. So if you lost one or two games, there really wasn't much to play for other than to win that game, or if you got a rival team like Belmont Hill, win. Now it's all about getting into the playoffs. 2 years ago, Rivers, for some reason, declined to play in the playoff. Governors didn't qualify for the playoffs. They got in.
As the eight. Thanks,
Mike. And they ended up playing in the championship game against Nobles. I was at the game. It was a great game.
Yep.
If it wasn't for Matt Tully, maybe, for Nobles, the score would have been different. But that's the quality of the ISL. It's anybody on any day can beat anyone. And now you've got something to play for. You've got 8 teams that can play for the top championship and the others to play for a championship as well.
Another tournament going on at the same time.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, too, I think a lot of people will look at the last 2 years and how it's played out and just be like, oh, well, Bell Hill's the one and they lost both times. And then it's like, well, Govs is one of the last year they were the 5th seed, and the year Jack was talking about they were the 8, and they just kind of squeaked in at the 8 because another team couldn't play. So you're looking at a tournament where history would dictate expectation. Anything can happen. And unfortunately, anything that can happen is the 1 seed has gone out the last 2 years, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is, Mike, sorry to interrupt, but the last 2 games of the season, not only are the teams fighting for a position to play in the playoffs, but they're also positioning themselves to have a higher seed, to host a home game, which is, a huge difference. Play at home in front of your home crowd because they draw very well.
Yeah, I think I probably mentioned this on the podcast last year. I mean, I'm not a fan of expanded playoffs generally. You know, it's kind of a scourge of American pro sports. I mean, everybody's in. But with the ISL, it works because you have those matchups, you know, depending on where you're seated. You know, what's the 7 versus 2 matchup going to be like? And generally, we've seen over the last couple of years that these quarterfinal games are very competitive, aside from 1 or 2 mismatches. So it's really where you slot in, who you get, and where you can go from there. And it's worked.
And you got to be playing at your best. That's the thing. You know, a lot of schools, I mean, my experience over the years, like Belmont Hill always comes out very quickly, and they've lost the last 2 years in the quarterfinals. So you do have to be playing at your best at the end of the year. Obviously, you got to stay healthy. You've got to have good goaltending. I mean, and
win faceoffs.
And win faceoffs.
It helps.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, you know, going through, now Mike and I, we were just talking about this. This is the biggest prep league in the country. I mean, for lacrosse at least, the 16 teams, I can't think of another league that has 16 teams. That's kind of why, you know, the notion of you can come out of this lower bracket and keep working your way up can happen. You know, you get some good recruiting, you get some good coaching, you get some good recruits, you get some good players, you get a really good goalie, you get a really good faceoff guy. That's you make a spine of your team, get a standout takeaway defender, you get a scorer from midfield, you got 2 attackmen that love to play 2-man, and you're there, right? Like it's not like other leagues where you need, you know, oh, I got to go up against this team that has like 1,000 recruits, although the top 5 teams, as we're going to get to, are basically fully recruited. The entire starting lineup is recruited, which is the other great part about it. And that wasn't always the case. You know, I think we have to look at the ISL as an ascending league still. Every single year, they keep getting better and they keep generating more interest in the league itself.
Yeah, and I'll take this minute and just give a shout out to the league's coaches. All 16 of them have been great these last couple of weeks with feedback, whether phone interviews or Zooms or trading emails. Kyle, you see a lot of these players, especially over the summer.
Yep.
So you have kind of a unique perspective on what they're bringing to the table. So, you know, you'll be following our coverage, you know, all season long, but it really gets going as we start March here at lacjournal.com, in New England Lacrosse Journal, the magazine, a lot of ISL, and we will take you right through to the end of the championship tournament in May.
Yeah, should we spoil the cover? Is that a good idea?
Spoil it.
Let's do it. I'm writing the feature on Govs. Why wouldn't I, right? Getting to the title 2 years in a row, underdogs all through the years, and as Jack and I were talking about before we started recording, just a team that plays angry. You have, that's the thing that translates to the next level. If you can get, you know, and not to pull the pun of they're the Red Dogs, get the dog in you, you know, I don't want to do that. I kind of just did. But that is the way they play. They play aggressive. They play relentless. They go at you at every position. And like the last 2 years, this is one of the years where they have the talent to back up that aggression. And they probably can get back to that game. I think they have to have a little more consistency, but we're going to get there.
And the other thing that Govs has going for them, I think they have one of the best young coaches in the game, whether it's at the college level or the high school level. Excellent. He played at Nazareth, very good player. We've had him on our podcast, but he is a very, very good coach.
Yeah, Tugger Sampson.
So we took a look at the league this year and how we're going to touch up base on every team, all 16. We're looking at a few at the start that are probably going to be long shots to make the championship tournament, just based on the overall amount of talent, amount of players, recent history, stuff like that. And then we're going to count down our top 10, starting with number 10, and we're going to do a little section on all these teams that have a legit shot to get into this tournament, and who knows, maybe win it.
Well, let's start with, not the bottom, but let's start with one of the teams that might struggle the most, and I think we can all agree that's Brooks.
Yeah, Brooks was one of 2 teams in the league last year that did not win a game. They went through the circuit, and you know, unfortunately for them, they were not very competitive in most games. I think they had 2 games where they were within single digits against other ISL teams. But there's reason for improvement. There's reason for hope there, and it starts on their defense. It's a younger group, but they've got some good juniors back there. They've got a good junior goalie in Braden Holt.
Yep.
You know, he's seen a lot of rubber in
rubber,
lacrosse?
yeah.
He's seen a lot of rubber. It's not just hockey. I can use that.
No, you can use that.
He's seen a lot of rubber. He's had a decent season last year, 45% saves. He'll look to improve on that. But if there's going to be a step up from Brooks, it's going to start probably on the defensive end.
Yeah, I think, we don't want to spend too much time on kind of every single team until we get to the top. The other team you mentioned that didn't win any games, that it actually is surprising to me, is St. George's.
Yeah, St. George's was a championship tournament team 2 years ago. I believe they finished in 6th place and went out against Nobles. In fact, that's one of the things that we note. The 2 years of the championship tournament, 10 of the 16 teams have had a place in that tournament, and had Rivers competed that first year, that would have been 11.
Yep.
So it's not just an exclusive club. There's some wiggle room. There's some ways to play yourself in. But and just one last note on Brooks before we put them away. I believe that's the only team in the ISL that doesn't currently have a college committed player.
Right.
So on paper, yeah, they're going to be looking up, and it's up to them to try to prove things differently.
For sure.
You mentioned St. George's. Yeah, they went winless in the league last year, and I think that's a team that's.
It's surprising because the year you're talking about, 2 years ago, they beat Holderness, and it was a huge upset.
Yeah, good Lakes Region team. Yeah.
Trust me, that got reverberated all the way through, and people, I don't look at every single score of every single game all the time, but I had to look at that one because I got a bunch of texts. It was like, how did this happen? And I was like, well, they had some guys, and they brought in some players, and this year, I'm going to shout out Hopkinton, New Hampshire native Henry Powell.
Yep.
Committed to Kenyon. I wish you were playing for me, but good luck at St. George's. And we were also talking, I went to ML8 there last year at the very conclusion. It was the first tournament of the year. St. George's is beautiful. It's in Newport, Rhode Island, overlooking the ocean. I mean, it's an incredible place. Like, if you're in Rhode Island, go watch a game at St. George's, man. Go watch one of these teams, these higher ranked teams coming to town, and you'll have a good time.
Yeah, with the field is positioned while you're watching a game, you can see the waves breaking in the background.
Yes.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. And St. George's, for a few years, were a lot, I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, were a lot more competitive than they were last year. But, the funny thing is, you talked about all the commits. I mean, they've got guys going to Gettysburg, Air Force. I mean, they've got some talent on that team.
Yeah, it starts in goal. You got Matthew Toad Dede. He goes by Toad every time I talk to the coach. He calls him Toad, so that's we're going with. He's going to the Air Force Academy. Played well last year, 57% saves.
Nick Barnes
going to the NESCAC, to Trinity. Mm-hmm. I believe coming off a 22-goal, 32-point season. So he's a guy who has scored at this level and can be looked at to put the ball in the net. So there are some pieces. There are some pieces for St. George to certainly get back into the win column and maybe rise even higher.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's take a look at Groton, who had a decent season last year, all things considered. I think if you want to say anything about what last season was, it was an overachieving year for them.
Yeah, Groton ended up competing in that consolation tournament, making it all the way to the final of that tournament, losing to Roxbury Latin. So they certainly did accomplish some good things. And one player I really want to focus on, we put the question out to all the ISL coaches about who they think is the league's most underrated player. And 4 of the league's 16 coaches, you couldn't pick your own player, 4 of the league's 16 said, junior midfield, J.P. Charpentier.
Oh, Charpentier, yeah.
Charpentier.
He's very good. Yes.
Coming off a 25-goal season last year, and just described as an old school, honest, two-way midi who just does the job and does it well.
Yeah, he's a grinder.
Yeah.
He's very athletic, and he gets after it. Fun to watch.
Yep. Let's keep. We're gonna keep these quick, so we're gonna keep moving. Let's go to St. Mark's, because I think their best goalie, their best player is a goalie, and it's Mark Gabois. He's going to Skidmore. I think one of the things we've seen this year, the early college season, Skidmore's a very good program, and I think what the pipeline is between ISL and the Liberty League, which is the league that Skidmore's in,
yep,
that's only going to keep increasing as the academics match up to that college league. So you can kind of draw a lot of parallels. Union gets a ton of guys out of there. It's a RPI gets a lot of guys out of the ISL that go there. It's an excellent kind of thing to watch going forward.
Yeah, it's terrific year last year. 54% saves. I believe it was all ISL honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
On a team that only won a couple league games, but he obviously caught the eyes of some opponents. They've also got a couple of freshman goalies in the pipeline that Craig Ferraro is very high on. It's another young team. It's probably a year, 2, 3 years away from really making any noise, but they're going to try to beat the teams that they're comparable with and maybe improve on that win total.
Yeah, one of the I was talking to Almquist, who's the goalie at Governors. And he said something to me that I'm not a goalie, so I don't think like this, but he's like, one of the roles of a goalie when there's other goalies there is you have to set the example. It's not just mentoring, it's setting the example of like, you have to get to here. And it's not an added pressure. It's one that Almquist specifically said he welcomed and he liked about Govs. And they have good underclassmen goalies at Govs coming up through that he's kind of mentored through, and he had a mentor as well. So it's always good to have a really good goalie that's a senior and then have underclassmen that he can teach his craft to.
And that's kind of a part of the culture, Jack, when you think about it, right? I mean, you want to leave your program in better shape than when you found it, okay? St. Mark's is not going to win an ISL title this year. You know, they have one committed player, it's the goalie. But, you know, if players like the goalie and some of their other veterans can go out and leave the place in a better program in a better place, that's really what they're looking to do.
Absolutely. And I think that having the opportunity to play in the league, even if you're not, winning games, these players are still getting recruited. They're developing their game, and they're college ready when they get out of whether it's St. Mark's or St. George, because they're playing high level lacrosse.
Yeah, let's move on to Lawrence, who also is a Skidmore recruit, one of their best players. He's a senior midfielder, Liam Teto. And also, talking about the Liberty League connection, we got Will Gaynor as a senior who's committed to Union. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is an incredibly young team. Talking to Sam Cleveland, the coach, he believes that 7 or 8 of their 10 starters are going to be freshmen or sophomores. That's young. There's a lot of other terms you could use for it, but I mean, you just keep coming back to that's a team that is going to, have a chance to develop together and grow together. But this year will be incredibly young.
Yeah, gonna be hard. The one thing when you say young players, like true freshmen, true sophomores at these schools, I just want you to make it through the season, because you're playing against big boys. You're playing against guys that are maybe reclassed or they transferred in from somewhere else and they've already got 3 years of high school experience somewhere else and they still have 2 more. There's a huge difference between a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Yeah, if you look at the history of the ISL, it's very rare did you see a freshman start at this level. I mean, not very many do. So the fact that they've got that many young players, yeah, it's going to be challenging, but 2 years down the road, they're going to obviously benefit from the experience and the development of the players.
Yeah, let's move on to the last team in this tier, which is Buckingham Brown and Nichols.
Yeah, and this is a team that we have in this tier, and I'm not ruling out, a playoff push for them. I think they have some pieces in place.
Yeah, again,
I found my notes here.
Again, the goalie is, I think, their best player.
You like the goalie.
Obviously, Will Fuller committed to Princeton, but Weisbird has made some crazy saves. I've seen him play in the summer. He's made some wild stuff. Henry Rome is actually really good going to Babson, senior midfielder. Has an uncanny ability to get past his guy, but I think that everyone's going to know that. And, this is the team that kind of famously produced, 3 or at least 2 ACC players.
Yeah.
We're just kind of looking at what the next thing is going to be from BB&M.
Yeah, 4-9 in the league last year. They beat the teams below them in the standings. They're going to try and make more of a splash this year, I would think, against some teams a little higher. But they didn't graduate a lot from last year. Some players, but not a ton. You mentioned Henry Weisbird, the goalie going to Holy Cross, and Will Fuller, obviously. So it's a team that's got some pieces in place, and it'll be interesting to see how the things play out for them.
One thing about the ISL, what you have to do today to be competitive is to recruit players.
Yeah.
And the head coach at Buckingham, Brown and Nichols, Mike Derenberger, has done a very good job the last couple of years getting players that can play at that level. And if you told me 3 or 4 years ago they would have a commit, their goalie Weisberg is going to Holy Cross, and obviously they got Fuller going to Princeton, they've got Verratti going to Conn College, that they had a player that was going to go to Princeton or Holy Cross, I said, you're crazy, because they were not very good. They weren't a lacrosse team. They were athletes playing lacrosse. He's done a fantastic job bringing in players who have some experience and developing them.
Yeah, Kyle touched on it. They had that class of players that began playing in the 8th grade, and one went to Duke, one went to Notre Dame, right? So they have brought in some players, and now it's just bringing in enough of them to be competitive in the ISL.
You just have to have more than 2 or 3, to compete in the ISL. That's just how it goes.
Yep.
Like, you got to build a spine, and then you got to build everything around it. And if you've got the culture there, it can come quick. But I don't think, all these 6 teams we've talked about already, I don't know if we're looking at them as the teams that are going to really jump.
They're the dark horses.
Yeah.
No question
Full-on
about
dark
it. And we'll see how it plays out, and they're hopefully get a chance to prove us wrong. But let's move into the top 10, and now we can have a little bit of fun, because we were not in lockstep with all of these rankings.
No, I did not love it. And at 10, we have Rivers, who, listen, Greg Canning is still playing ISL lacrosse. I don't know how that's happening. I love him. He is a big body that is scared of no man, fears no man, will dodge on anyone, does not care. He will get his shot off, and you have to deal with him first on offense. But I think when you talk about this team, the thing you talk about is the defense. Jack Rabazzi is a monster.
Yep.
Charlie Contaros is a monster. Like, the whole back line of this team is fearsome.
You mentioned before we came on, you thought Rivers might be a little underappreciated at number 10.
Yeah, I think, they had 2 players that played in the it's the Massachusetts Showcase, the Winter Showcase, and they were the 2 best pulls there. And if those guys are starting for Rivers, they were like both 6'4", both silky smooth with the ball, got it up and out of the ground, able to just really go after every single player that was there. And those are kids that are uncommitted. Those 2 kids are uncommitted. I don't know why they're uncommitted, because if you put them together with those 2 other players that I mentioned, you're going to have a great defense. And, those 2 players are Charlie Holmes and Luke Morin. I mean, they're both Fighting Clams guys. They're both Rivers guys. Knowing that Justin Walker used to be the coach at Rivers, you can see that connection. They're incredible. They're both juniors. They're huge. They are long, and they are menacing. And I think you just putting those 2 with Rabazzi down low, it's a murderer's row. That's going to be tough.
Offensively, they did graduate their top 2 scorers.
Yep.
They have a veteran in goal. They have a new face-off guy in Zachary Musey, who was a Belmont High star last year. So the specialty positions look to be pretty solid.
Yeah, they've got Marcos Ramos, who was also at the same showcase. He had moments where I've seen him play a bunch of times as well. He's kind of one of those goalies that makes some wild saves, and he's a streaky guy. So he can keep you in a game, and he can win you a game. But you don't want him to be the best player on the field for you to win the game.
Number 9, Milton Academy finished 7th last year, made the championship tournament. They slot in the preseason at number 9. Another team, Kyle, with specialists.
Yeah, Willow Valley is awesome. I love watching this kid play. Like, I remember watching him and being like, he was a freshman at one of my first showcases that I did for NELJ, and I was like, how are you a freshman? Because he was huge.
Yeah, big boy.
He was also he moonlighted as an attackman. This is the kind of face-off guy. He's committed to Trinity, but he's the kind of guy that can not just win the draw. He can win the draw and then score a goal after he's slid to. He can shrug off the slide. That's how easily he's able to get you points on the board. Like, that's the kind of player that really changes how you have to game plan for a team, because you could be up 4 or 5, and then Lavalle wins 3 in a row and gets 3 goals, and all of a sudden it's a 1-goal game, and it's only been like a minute. That's the kind of game changer he can be.
And their attack position, obviously a very good player. Natty Mason is a junior attackman. Now, they're going to be keen on him, so it's going to be very interesting to see how they play that, because guys are going to be sliding on him early. They're going to double team him. How the players around him are going to respond and produce and make him the productive player he was last year.
Yeah, last year, 32 goals, 25 assists, 57 points. Had a great year, committed to Georgetown. We send out these coaches surveys at the start of the season, and we ask the coaches to name the ISL's most underrated player and the most impressive player. Natty Mason was the only player who got votes in both categories. So read into that what you will. Another NESCAC commit, Silas Hamblett in goal. And the question I think Mark Goodrich, the coach, really wonders about is the inexperienced defense. Is that going to be up to speed enough for this team to make another playoff push?
I mean, we were kind of not arguing, but we were kind of like, is defense more important? Because if it is, then Rivers goes above Milton.
Yep.
In my mind. But you've got that difference maker in LaValle that can really turn a game, and that's kind of the tiebreaker for me.
If you have possessions more than the other team, they have a chance, even if their defense is young and inexperienced.
Right, and you can learn. It's on the job learning, man. It's if you're getting playing time, you're getting coached up. I think Goodrich is one of the best coaches in the league, so you're not going to suffer there at all.
This summer, Piatelli Lacrosse is excited to launch the Piatelli Panthers Girls Lacrosse Program. Youth club lacrosse options for girls will be offered in addition to summer camps and training options in central and western Massachusetts. Our programs will be led by experienced women coaches that not only understand how to develop youth-level players, but have also coached at the high school and college levels. More information on the Piatelli Panthers will be posted on our website at piatellilacrosse.com. That's Piatelli lacrosse.com.
We're moving up to number 8, and you can perceive this as the team that we expect to fill out the championship tournament field. They just missed a place in the championship tournament field last year, losing out on the 8th place by a tiebreaker, and that is Roxbury Latin.
Yeah, and they have, this is a team that has an excellent assortment of talent, kind of not sprinkled, but like at every position. They've got a guy that's like, okay, that's the one guy on this unit. If you broke down all the teams by units, that's why Roxbury Latin's at this position, because they have guys, they have middies that can score. They have a good LSM in Sean DeLallo. They have a good faceoff guy in Hayden Cody. I think we've talked about Cody at least 2 years in a row. I think he's been playing there that long and making a difference that long. John Thomas playing defense, and another Georgetown commit and Johnny Price. I mean, Georgetown, you're just raiding the ISL, man. What's going on?
I mean,
seeing that name
Coach Warren.
You've got Hayden Cody, very good face-off guy. He's going to Bucknell. That's something that the ISL's really gravitated to, if that's the right word. But they have a lot of good face-off guys in the league. And I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, you might have had 1 or 2 who dominated. So now every team is somewhat challenged. I don't think there's one guy you can say is, dominating the face-off circle, but he's a good one.
The other thing, too, if you look at levels, right? Like we're talking about, I think everybody that plays at a prep, I think kind of them, and maybe if it's not them, it's their parents' dream to go to an Ivy League school, right? And if it's not that, then it's NESCAC. And then I would say if you're going back to D1,
It's Patriot.
It's Patriot League. And then if you're going back to D3, again, like we were talking about earlier, it's Liberty.
Yep.
So you can see the class of these players academically as well as athletically.
Yeah.
And
So
that's how it
team
shakes out.
And what this tells you with the NESCAC commits, the Patriot commits, the Ivy League commits, these coaches are getting players who are also having success at those schools.
Yes.
So they're coming back for more.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Just wrapping it up with Rox Latin. I mean, you mentioned John Thomas, Vermont defender, Cody Bucknell, faceoff guy, Johnny Price, midfielder, going to Georgetown. They really seem to have good players, across all the positions. Did graduate a pair of Division I caliber goalies, though, and that'll be the biggest question mark that chases them into the new season.
Yeah. Let's move on to number 7, and that is Tabor. And they have another O'Neill. I mean,
like, six straight years of O'Neills.
I mean, how many O'Neills are there? Is there another one?
That's a lot of production.
It's listen, natural goal scorer. You can kind of point that out. You can kind of look at it however you want. Get this guy the ball around the goal mouth, and you're gonna get production. That's what you have to look at, and that's where I start first. I think Ronan Shapani is an excellent.
I think he's underrated.
LSM. He is underrated. I think because he committed to Fairfield, people are like, "Oh, you're going to Fairfield or whatever." They've kind of maybe thought he was a different level of league.
He's gonna play early at Fairfield.
He's a very good player. He's a menace. Like, you've seen him on the club circuit. He's a menace for sure.
Very good player.
Yeah.
Mentioned Evan O'Neill scoring 41 goals last year, also 39 assists.
Yeah.
That says something.
Yeah, I think he's not only just got a nose for the goal, he knows how to run an offense. I mean, Connor Gordon in his second season, he's got to give the keys to someone. There's not a better player to give him to than Evan O'Neill.
They did graduate 3 starting close defenders and a goalie. Obviously, the crowning moment for that defense came in the quarterfinals against top-seeded Belmont Hill when they held them to 4 goals in a 6-4 upset win. So they will try to develop some defense and try to get back into the tournament and make some more noise.
Well, the good news is that Connor Gordon is a goalie, and no better coach to coach a goalie than a former goalie.
Mm-hmm. And what's very interesting in the last 5 or 6 years, if you look at the coaches, a number of the coaches here, like Billy Day and Tucker Sampson, are going into their second year. A lot of these coaches are going into their second or third year. So it's a new generation of coaches, good young coaches who are in that club circuit too. So they're out watching a lot of players and recruiting players. Tucker Sampson's with the Twisters, Billy Day's with the Massachusetts. You can go on and on and on.
Right.
So my point is, these schools are hiring guys who are, involved in the game, because it's important for them to draw these players to their programs to win a championship.
Jack, you teed me up for a segue, and you couldn't have done it any cleaner. You mentioned, I think last year we were talking about 4 new head coaches in the ISL. This year, no new head coaches in the ISL. Next year, there will be at least 1 new head coach in the ISL, with the news that broke very recently that Doug Worthen is stepping down at the end of the season at Middlesex after 7 years at the helm. And his history, obviously, with the program goes back to his playing days in the 1990s. He'll step away. Brian Powers, currently the coach at Catholic Memorial High School, will be taking over. He'll be appointed in July, and that program will have a new coach. They come in at number 6 in our preseason ISL rankings, Middlesex.
And they have the best, most versatile offensive player in the league in Owen Cran. Owen Cran is, I think I've described him as, when I first watched him play, I was like, why are you playing midfield? Like, you are not, like, he plays like an attackman. And I say that as a compliment. I don't say that as a dig. But what I realize is they just want to get this guy the ball above the goal, because he can shoot anytime he wants. This guy has a green light, and he deserves it. And this is a borrow term from Jerry Byrne, he will screw dodge someone into the ground and then get a shot off. Like, he's kind of the closest thing to unstoppable that the league has.
Yeah, last year, 68 goals, 28 assists, 96 points. That ranks second in the league to Grayson McClements of Nobles. Again, referring to the ISL coaches' surveys, we asked the coaches to name their most impressive player in the league that doesn't play on their team. Named on 6 out of 16 ballots, Owen Cran.
Yeah, he deserves it. But it's not just him. You have Nick Moore here, who came in. He's a former Acton Boxborough guy. Yep. He's got that toughness. He's got that grit. People think that's a little underrated at the prep level. If you can bring that kind of, ability to get your shot off and fire through doubles and make a smart decision with the ball, you're going to have an impact. And I think Moore's one of those guys.
Andrew Matatisi, is that correct?
Matarese.
Matarese, yeah, Matarese.
Indeed.
I've seen him play a few times. He's a solid defenseman. I believe he's going to Lafayette. But he'll shore up that defense for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the question mark. Maybe he's obviously a very good player. There needs to be some more depth around him. Doug Worthen, talking before the season, thinks it's as complete an offense as he's had in his 7 years. So this is a team that's going to be able to score some goals. We know Owen Cran's going to score some goals. Can the defense keep up and push them higher?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Arjun Rath play as a goalie. He's got some moves. He's got some shot stopping ability. He's got another guy next to him in Will Cohen, both juniors, not committed yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were committed by the time this podcast went up. I think those are trickling in. We're very slowly now. We're not in the recruiting season, but that can still happen.
Well, this is the point in the podcast where we kind of draw that imaginary line of demarcation when it comes to ISL contenders. Okay,
yes.
We've given you the rest, and now we've got 5 teams that we still need to go through, and frankly, they are all loaded. They are all talented. They all have good histories in this league. The order can be up for the debate. We'll see it play out over the next few months, but our opinion is that these 5 right now have set themselves a little bit apart.
I think you could make an argument for all 5 of these teams to be one.
Yep.
Yes.
I think it can be made, and that's it. You can make it on talent. You can make it on sheer volume of players. You can make it on past success. You can make it on coaching, all of that. But we're going to go with number 5, which is Thayer.
Thayer Academy.
Yes. Bill Day, friend of the pod, friend of mine, friend of yours.
Yes.
Right? You go way back with him. It's his second year. I think that's kind of the time where he's going to, this is Thayer is dangerous because they can figure things out on defense with BD at the helm. That's one thing that they can do. They have incredible. Nate Austin Johnstone he will put you on an island and he will leave you there. Like, he's the kind of guy that can go to the low corner and just dust somebody and someone's going to be open. You know, he's committed to Rutgers. He's been committed to Rutgers. It feels like it's been 3 years, but it's only been 2.
Year and a half, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy to watch for me. He's one of their best guys. Jackson Hennehan also going to Harvard.
Face off. Yep.
Yeah, face-off guy. You can go down the list. This team has...
It's unbelievable, the commits on this
It's got
team.
3 Army commits.
Yep.
You know, like, are you serious? I think we did a story on it, laxjournal.com. I mean, it's I've never seen that before. Have you seen that before?
No, it's a rarity for sure, and it's not just. I mean, 8 Division I commits on this team right now as of this moment. They've got 75% of their scoring back. Okay, they've got a good shape with the faceoff with Hennehan. They've got a new goalie in Gar Long who gives them takes care of that. Teddy Lally, a Notre Dame commit, is going to score goals for them. There's depth everywhere, and I guess maybe the question is, how can they check in at 5th?
I think it's only down. I think like the tiebreaker. Well, the other guy we have to mention is Teddy Lally, who's probably one of the best attackmen in the league.
Yeah,
going not just because he's going to Notre Dame. I mean, the dude just twists you. Like he's a scorer. He's a passer. He's a playmaker. And I don't think he'll be an attackman when he goes to Notre Dame. Personally, I think he'll probably be a midfielder. But you have guys that can make a difference at every position. I think what puts Thayer at 5. Correct me if I'm wrong, is we just have to see you do it. I don't think is that wrong? Is that off base?
That's a fair point. Okay. And I think another reason would be there's 4 very good teams that we still have to get to.
Yes.
Okay. But you look at the first 2 years of the ISL championship tournament, 3 of the 4 semifinalists were repeat. So, okay. It's Nobles has been there twice. St. Seb's has been there twice. Governors has been there twice. Thayer was there once. Tabor was there once. Okay, so you're right. It's kind of show me. This looks like a great team. We like the coach a lot. We like what they have across the field.
Yeah,
let's see it.
Put it on the bulletin board, baby. Let's go.
You got Chenard's going to Army. You got a number of players going to Army on this team. But one thing I wanted to say about Lally, I think Lally is the most athletic attackman in the league.
Yeah,
he's very versatile.
That's
so
fair.
you could play him at midfield if you wanted him to get a short stick. Right, and whether he'll draw a short stick or not, but an opportunity. But I think he, like you said, he'll probably end up being a midfielder at Notre Dame, but the most athletic attackman in the league for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really double him because Chouinard's hands will just get you a goal. The guy's got crazy hands. That's one of their best assets. Let's go to number 4. We talked about this one for a while. They are the cover. It's Govs.
I think we let you run with this one, Kyle. I mean, you've learned more about this team and this program over the last week or so, probably, than you may even want to know.
Yeah. I mean, one of the hardest things to do as a coach when your team is good and talented is to instill the mentality, the positive side of the mentality that comes with being an underdog, right? It's hard. When you win, and sometimes you win big and sometimes you win by a little. But when you are a team that wins a lot, it's hard to get that in them. And one of the things that I think people would argue about with us with putting them at 4 is, they lost 8 games. How can you do that? Is it just off of their performance in the tournament? And I don't think so. I think the thing about this team that's different to me now that I've kind of been embedded with them a little bit and talking to some of their captains and star players is I'm gonna say this. So we have talked to dozens of prep coaches in the last month or so, getting ready to do this. Dozens. There is one team that has gotten back to me within 1 minute every time I text them or ask something from them, and it's Govs. And I don't mean Tucker Sampson. I mean his players. Brock Garachi, okay? Ethan Winterbottom, Andrew Almquist. Boom, boom, boom. Would love to talk to you. Can we do this time? Can we do this? Organized, ready, prepared. That's, to me, that I know that you're listening to this and you're like, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. I'm like, let me tell you something. It does. It does. When you are ready to, you're not scared of the moment. I was like, you guys can text it in if you want. You don't have to call me. Like, I know how it is. Everyone's busy. And they're like, no, we will call you. We will call you at this time and we will do it. and we did them all. I talked to all 3 of them in the same night.
Yep.
And that's incredible.
It's
to me.
appreciated.
It is. And
from our standpoint.
thank you, please. Where's the camera? If I call you, call me back. Okay? That's all.
I think the difference between Govs and all the other teams, and I might get yelled at for this, but they are a very unselfish team. They play for their teammates, not to the other teams do. If you look at all their commits, they don't have guys going to Army or Virginia or top 10 schools. They have a number of commits, but I think they are the best team in the league in terms of the way they play for each other.
Yeah, and one of the things that influenced me to...
And that comes from Tucker Sampson.
Yes, and one of the things... And Steve Moreland before him, putting the culture that
Absolutely.
that Sampson has taken to the next level, I think, with this group of recruits that, and I talked to all 3 of those guys I mentioned, and one of the things they said is like, we've been waiting for this. This is what we want. We want to challenge for a title. Like, it does, we all hang out together because, Garachi's from Texas, Winterbottom's from Illinois. And I was like, is that weird for you guys? Do you, is your locker room fun? They're like, our locker room's awesome. We all hang out together. We go to meals together. We do everything together. And that speaks to that too. It's off-field stuff too.
And you bring up a good point because Govs is a boarding school. So the players have more time to hang out with each other, go out on the field, take some shots, play some catch together. It's not like that at the day schools.
Right. And let's also mention, too, I mean, it's not exactly a program that's coming out of the forest, that has not been recognized.
Yeah,
Pete Bidstrom had some pretty nice governor's team back in the day, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go to number 3. Who we got?
Well, it's maybe not on my ballot, but it's Nobles. It's Nobles, the 2-time defending champion, checks in at number 3.
Put him at 3.
This
We're
was a
so
point of
stupid.
contention.
We're so dumb. So let us know how dumb we are on social media.
Can you replace Matt Tully?
No.
That's one question.
I think Train.
You like the goalie, though.
I do. He is good.
He's good.
He's in Train.
Here's the difference. Tully was a monster out of the cage. Tully's best asset, I think, personally, watching him play and for your club teams and for Nobles, was his ability to make a play outside of the cage as well as in it. I think Train has the similar shot stopping acumen, but isn't as skilled outside of the cage as Tully. But that's not a downgrade necessarily, just because Tully was so amazing at that, right?
Yeah, he was. And the thing about Tully too, not only is he a high competitive guy, great leader on and off the field. You're not going to see a guy who works harder than him on his skill set off the field. But he just grew so much in the last 3 years in terms of his leadership. And again, the way he's able to control the game outside the goal. He scored a couple of goals, I think, in his career at Nobles. You don't see too many goalies do that. He's got a great outlet, creates a lot of fast breaks. But,
It's funny. I mean, just in preparing for this podcast, I went back to the ISL pod we recorded at this time last year.
Yeah.
And noticed, I mean, we were all a year more handsome back then. That's changed a little bit. But it was the same 5 big teams that we were talking about in the podcast. And of those 5 teams, I thought Nobles got hit the hardest by graduation. And when I look at that team, and you're trying to replace 136 points from Grayson McClements, ISL single season record. You're trying to replace Matt Tully in goal, one of the better goalies that's come through the league in years.
Yep.
That's a lot. And I know they have some great young attackmen. They have some depth. They have Christian Grosso at the face-off, who's going to be,
difference maker.
Yeah, difference maker, maybe the best, out there. But I still think they're giving up a lot compared to the teams that are going to be jostling them for position, and that's why I think 3rd might be a little high.
Yeah.
So we talked about this before the podcast. I think the key to these top 5 schools is the kids who are coming in to replace the Tullys and all these high-performing attack scorers and points and so on, because a lot of these schools have done a nice job filling those spots over the years. So it's going to be interesting how, the freshman steps into the sophomore steps into the junior, and see how he performs. Some may perform better. some may not perform as well as expected.
Yeah, if we're just talking about Govs, I mean, Will Chasson and Tuck Gilbane are going to get points.
Yeah.
Those are dudes that are going to put up points. Tuck Gilbane's only a sophomore, but he's going to score. Chasson's going to create. He's one of the better creating midfielders. Just because he's not committed to he's not a great player, guys. He's got an eye that most midfielders don't have. And most of those midfielders, when coaches see that eye, they see it in 8th grade and they make that kid play attack. Now you're an ex-attackman. He is an ex-attackman playing midfield. So I think that's a difference maker. And
do you think, we haven't talked about the other schools, do you think that the Matt Raleighs at Nobles, the Adam White, even though Tucker Sampson is only in his 3rd season as the head coach, he's been there a long time, right? And then who's the 4th team?
Tim Sullivan.
But
Bill Daisley
a lot of these top programs, their coaches have been there longer than a number of the other schools. I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, that could. I know, sounding out a lot of the coaches in compiling this preview information, Matt Raleigh was mentioned. That's why a lot of teams think that Nobles may not fall down much, if at all, is because their coaching is in very good place.
Yeah, I think Bell Hill's the team when you're like next man up, but Nobles has become that team too. Yeah. Like those are 2 teams, but they're not the number. Neither one of those teams is the number 2 team.
2 left.
Sebs.
Number 2, St. Sebastian's. Take it away, Jack.
Well, Coach White has done a fabulous job over the years when he took it over. He's fairly young, but
still is.
Yeah, I know, and he's a great student of the game. He really his background is defense. Played at Dartmouth. Has a great rapport with his players. He's very fair, and he has a game plan. Going into every game, not that the other guys don't, but he does a good job with his game plan and executes it very well and does a nice job working with the younger players and bringing them along.
Yeah, best-selling author as well, The Midcoast.
Yes.
The Midcoast, buy it now at bookstores near you. I think the thing that jumps out to me here is the talent that this team has in attack. I think, obviously, we can talk about James Joyce and Cormac Walsh as guys that are going to produce from the midfield, but Chris Mirages is so fun to watch because he always he's one of the few shooters, and I love watching shooters personally. That's just kind of my thing. I love watching how guys get power on their shots. Mirages gets power on his shot. No matter where he takes it, he can go underhand, sidearm, 3/4 over the top. Like, he's so unpredictable. And he's got so much power. I mean, I'm not surprised he's going to Denver. He's the perfect Denver player in that offense, coming in from the wing. But that's the guy I would really key on. In addition to, listen, how many commits do they have? Like 20? Like, this is a team that just has, tons of guys doing great jobs all over the field.
Yeah, a couple points. And you mentioned Mirages, 39 goals, 51 points last year, big season.
Yeah.
His junior. Yeah, 12 committed players, most in the ISL. 10 Division I committed players, which I believe is joint most in the ISL.
And the other 2 are going to NESCACs.
Right. So on paper, it's a loaded team. And I think one of the things I didn't realize until I got into this preview process and got this information from Adam is that this was a pretty young team last year. They only really graduated 4 players that saw much of the field.
Look at Teddy Frizzoli, started as a freshman, had an outstanding freshman year, and he's going to be a player to watch.
Played as an 8th grader, right?
He played as an 8th grader. He's a player to watch for sure.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of those guys. Across the field, they are replacing a goalie.
Yep.
So that'll be one thing. But you look at it, on paper, you just don't see any weaknesses.
Yeah, I really like Devin McGuire as a defender. I think he's versatile. He's not just a shutdown approach guy. He's not just a sliding guy. He's a guy that can play LSM too if he wanted to.
Yeah, his brother's at Duke.
Yeah, just one of those guys that can slot anywhere around the field.
Another Duke guy, Brendan Fulham.
Yeah,
right. I know coaches had some good things to say about him in the coaches survey. So he's definitely another player to watch on the defensive end. 2 guys going to Holy Cross, and Paul Armstrong and Crosby Thurman. We have a story on them on LacroSjournal.com that I wrote, and it just kind of fit the culture that they were looking for, and that's they had a lot of interest from some Big Ten schools, and they chose Holy Cross over that. All right,
here we go.
One left.
Number 1. My favorite parents in the league, Belmont Hill. Let's go.
Belmont Hill gets the nod as our preseason #1 team, and let's unpack the history first, and then we'll talk about everything we like about this team, and there is a lot to like about this team.
Sure.
Finished first in each of the last 2 seasons. Upset by the #8 team in the quarterfinals each of the last 2 seasons. Third time a charm, or turning over a new leaf?
Listen, this team just has to be consistent scoring, and they'll be fine. Yep. This is one of those teams that if this team can score over 12 goals a game, they shouldn't lose. I honestly believe that. The way that they control the ball and make the most of their possessions is why they're #1. If you're asking, if you're looking at anything, you're trying to do systemic analysis of all these teams, personally, for me, the ability that they have to control tempo, control the ball, control possession is better than any other team.
I think Belmont Hill has more player options in the ISL than any other school. I believe they have the largest enrollment. And what I was so very impressed with them the last 2 years in their history is I really believe they were the most athletic team, top to bottom, in the league. At all positions, their size, where they run, the way they play defense, the goaltending. I mean, every year they're playing for a championship because of that. And obviously, Tim Sullivan has done a fantastic job, getting the players ready every single year to compete and win a championship.
And the thing about Sullivan, too, one of the things that I learned, we did the cover story on them last year at this time, is that he is involved with the youth level. So he knows the kids that are coming up through a lot of the times that he's getting, when they're 5th graders or 6th graders. And he can kind of see okay, this is how he would work in the system. Even if the kid doesn't end up going to Bell Hill, you can see, that's an advantage. That's not something that a lot of coaches have the time for or the dedication for at any level. I'm not saying that they don't, but that's an extra step that I think makes the difference in why they play so uniformly together and successfully. Not even together, just successfully in their systems.
A lot of talent on this team, all over the field. Eli Friedman at the faceoff, 70% last year. Is going to Cornell, I believe.
Yeah, he is going to Cornell.
Yeah, he's going to Cornell. And one player, defender, Finn Fox. This is a guy who you could probably talk about his game a lot better than I can. But I hear what people are saying. And one ISL coach told me not only is he the best defender in the ISL, he's probably the best defender that's come through the ISL in the last 5 years. Yeah, that's a compliment.
You look at defenders, and the way that I've kind of changed the way I look at defenders is, are you able, everyone is just like, oh, well, can you shut a guy down? Modern defenders, it's hard to shut these guys down, so you better be able to do everything else and have a chance to do that. And one of the things that he is very good at, his approaches are insane. He's a great support defenseman, and that's probably why people said that to you, because that's the one skill that is hardest to teach at this level, and the skill that you need to have to be successful at college to get playing time. If you can't be a 2 or a 3 slide or know where the ball is going to go and understand how the offense works, you can't play in college. You can play, but you'll play when your team's already winning or your team's already losing. That's the difference between defensemen here, there, and at the next level. And I think, for Fox, that's one of the things that he brings.
Okay. We've got a very good attackman, Dave Evans' son, Preston Evans. He's going to Virginia. They've got a lot of scoring power, for sure.
Will Stewart, Ben DiBattista. Yeah, there's no shortage.
Yeah, DiBattista's very good. Yeah. DiBattista has... he has the drop shoulder move down where he can kind of do a little shuffle feint, and then he'll drop a shoulder and all of a sudden he's shooting over your ear. He's just one of those players.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
I think Finn Fox plays one-on-one defense like Adler, his approach at Cornell. Adler's
Stalker.
Stalker.
Yes.
Adler is one of the best. I would go to the Cornell games to watch him. Most people go to games to watch the offensive guys, the goalies. How often does somebody go watch? I couldn't wait to watch this kid play. Same with this Finn Fox. Yep. He's that type of player.
Okay. Absolutely. I think now is the time where we make our picks and wrap this thing up. And I believe we have picked wrong every single season.
Have we?
So,
Excellent.
I think so. One of us picked.
Yeah,
I think you picked.
I pick St. Sebastian's every year.
Yeah. Actually, no. I picked Nobles one of the years.
Did you?
I don't know if it was. I think I picked Thayer last year, and I think I picked Nobles the year before that. But
It's not easy.
No, it's so difficult.
Are we picking from this top 5 though?
I'll jump out there because I've given this some thought, and I'm not comfortable it's going to be right in 3 months, but I'm comfortable with where it is now. We look at these rankings, and for what they're worth, very little. It's entertainment, right? We're trying to tee up the season and give people a little insight into these great teams. I don't agree with all of the way they've all slotted in, but I like the 1 and I like the 2, and I'm going to take the safe route to a championship pick: Belmont Hill over St. Sebastian's.
Wow. You have to go. Don't pick Sebs
Mike,
again.
I was gonna take Belmont Hill over St. Sebastian's, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take St. Sebastian's over Belmont Hill. I mean, it's a toss up.
It's
those top 4 teams, 5 teams, any of those teams could win the championship. And again, it comes down, and we talked about it, is how they're playing at the end of the season, being healthy. You want to get in the top 8. Those 5 teams will end up being in it'll come down to their seed, right? And
matchup in the first round,
and how well they're playing at the
works.
time. And you've got so many good face-off guys. Possession is going to be so important. And that's it. But I'm going to take St. Sebastian's over Belmont Hill.
Fair enough.
I really, really want to take Nobles or Govs.
You're not there.
No.
You're 90% of the way there to a
I'm
pick.
so
but you're not all the
close.
way there yet.
No, and I gotta take Sebs, man. The offense is why, and I know that I basically I'm contradicting myself talking about defense for like half this podcast, but the ability of Sebs to put out 6 guys that are not only good with the ball and can score, but can move off ball and don't mind it. It's better than anyone else. Sorry. Like, that's, for me, that's a thing that I have to look at. And I love Belmont Hill systems. I don't think that's a bad pick at all. I think this is totally the year they could get over the hump. I think that's probably the best pick in terms of the motivations there, the talents there. We have them ranked number 1 for a reason. But I just think Sebs has so many pieces and so many players that can do anything all over the field that they're just, it's hard to guard 6 guys. Right. A lot of other teams don't have, they have 6 guys, but they don't have 6 guys like this. Right. So,
well, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch for sure.
Yeah. Let's remind people that a lot of this content is already on our website right now at laxjournal.com. So, catch up with anything you might have missed. That includes the most underrated players, most impressive players, team preview capsules for all 16 league teams, plus some stuff outside the ISL from NE West, Lakes region. We will have this all spring long, all the way through championship weekends at laxjournal.com and in the issues of New England Lax Journal.
All right. And we want to thank you again for listening to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast. For Jack Piatelli, I'm Kyle Devitt. We'll see you next time.